Are we master over our finances? Are we master over our bodies? Are we master over our occupation? Are we masters over our relationships? Or are we slaves? Because a slave doesn't exert their will. They're under the will, thus the power of other people. What's going on? It is a great day to be a man. This is the Better Man channel, where we choose to solidify ourselves in a position of power. We want to give ourselves as many options as we can to retain our autonomy. I want to talk about extending our power, but I can't begin that discussion without first diving into the idea of free will. And I don't want to get too deep, but I don't want to be too shallow either, but I don't want to get into the existential meaning of, well, do we have free will or not? Because we know from the beginning of our lives, from parents, from the education systems, that we've been conditioned to believe certain ways, and we've picked up these certain patterns of thinking that most likely there's some of those that we're never going to be able to shake off. It's just as much as part of who we are as it is breathing. And it's very difficult to remove ourselves completely from that narrative that society, parents, education has imposed upon us. But that's part of this channel. We're at least beginning to examine and taking a look at it and see what we can do to regain some sovereignty in our life. But for this discussion, as far as free will, if we have a couple options, I'm saying that's the beginning of free will. I can choose what I want to eat. I choose if I lay in bed. I choose if I get out of bed. I choose if I go to work. I choose if I stay home. On that very shallow level, I have free will. And what got me thinking about this is I was listening to a lecture on Nietzsche. I love Nietzsche. I love reading him. I love his affirming. He says yes to life, and he has this idea to be powerful and to create your own way and to say yes to the opportunities and not be a victim. And I love that. And so I was thinking about how we can extend our power. And the lecture went on to suggest that Nietzsche believed the only way to extend your power is through free will. And we only have free will if we have the ability to make promises and carry those out. For example, if I promise you that I'm going to give you $50 tomorrow, outside of an act of God, there's nothing preventing me from showing up tomorrow because I have the free will and the power over my life to make my own choices. And that's what I'm getting at. That's the heart of the discussion that I want to have today. We only have power if we have the ability to carry that out outside of any act of God, that if I tell you I'm going to do something, I have the power and the authority to do it. And so if we take a look at our lives, we live in a government that's starting to remove some of those freedoms and liberties and laws that we possess to have autonomy over our life. Right? Just because the government tells you that you can do this or do that doesn't mean that you're free. It just means they've given you a couple options. And the premise of this podcast is for men to regain and reclaim their sovereignty that's slowly eroded and been stripped away over the course of time. And so we looked at on a governmental level. We can look at on an individual level, relationships, whether it be intimate, friendship, business. How much power do we have over our lives? In an intimate relationship, does the partner only give you a few options? Does the workplace only give you a few options? Do you have the ability to make promises in your life outside of those relationships that's in your control? And Nietzsche talks about these master moralities and slave moralities. And if you're a slave, you don't have any free will because you're subject to the will of those that are over you. And so again, the heart of this discussion, do we have our own free will in every facet of our life? Are we master over our finances? Are we master over our bodies? Are we master over our occupation? Are we masters over our relationships? Or are we slaves? Because a slave doesn't exert their will, they're under the will, thus the power of other people. We can only extend our power when we can extend our options to have free will. If I can choose this or choose that, then I have power over my life. And so we have to begin to examine this in different areas of our lives. Do I have the power to make a promise in this facet of my life? Could I promise you something in the financial realm of my life? Could I promise you something in the intellectual aspect of my life? Can I promise you something in my actual physical property, my private enterprise? Do I have the power to make promises and give and carry those out, or am I at the whim of other people? And that's the heartbeat of this channel. That's the heartbeat of what I'm trying to understand, to examine, to uncover is, where am I lacking? What areas am I a slave, and where can I begin to extend my power, extend my free will, extend who I am, so that I have the options to carry out my own damn life? And if we want to ever free ourselves from this rat race, if we ever want to free ourselves from the slavery that's imposed upon us by so many aspects, man, whether it's I'm a fan of capitalism. I believe in capitalism, and I believe in that. But many times we get so caught up in that shiny new object that we become slaves to those passions. We become slaves to the pleasure. And slavery in any form is wrong. And I want us to become masters. I want to be master over my finances. I want to be master over my mental capacity. I want to be master over my finances, my occupation, my career path, my choices. And that's what it comes down to as men. We see this idea of masculinity being toxic. We see the idea of standing up for what you believe in that traditional sense, and what's sustainable and what actually works. That's going against the grain nowadays. We see this topsy-turvy, upside-down world where people fail to recognize that in this chaos, where they think they're actually gaining some traction, they're just becoming a slave to another ideology. They're just becoming a slave to another narrative imposed upon them by the elite masters that are indoctrinating you with this other idea of slavery. We live in America, and it is a great country, and I love it, and I'm thankful. But there are some flaws, and there are some things that hinder us, and just because we're given a few options doesn't mean that we're free. And I love liberty. I love freedom, as we all should. And when those begin stripped away from us, and we see this in the current climate, the current culture, and not to bring up the vaccine, but the vaccine and some of those policies and mandates that are being imposed upon people, bring about this subject that needs to be addressed. Do we have free will? Because when we lack free will, we lack power. And when we lack power, we lack the ability to make those promises, to carry out those promises. When we do not have the free will to make our own choices and carry those out, then it means we're a slave to the powers that be, who tell us what we can do and what we can't do. And again, that can be on a government level, and that's easy to point out in the current climate. But more so, it's on this individual level, because individuals make up the collective, and that's what I'm concerned with. Individuals, what we can begin to do to shape the collective. So on individual levels, whether in relationships, romantically or business or friends, how much power do you possess? Do you have the ability to make promises and carry those out according to your will and at your discretion? Or do you rely, are you dependent upon other sources? Financially, could I come up with $10,000 tomorrow to invest or move here or move into this situation for my favor? Or would I need a loan? Or would it take me 2 years to save that much? And I'm very concerned with my finances. I want to be very aware about that. I want to be financially independent. I don't want to be a slave to someone else. I don't want to be a wage slave. I don't want to be a dependent upon anyone else. I want to be the master of my finances. So in order to extend that power, I have to have the options, because the more options, the more ability I have to exert free will. And the free will gives me the power to do as I will. We're men. We're created to be sovereign. We're created to possess as many options and to continue to extend those and extend the boundaries. And in doing so, we extend our power. So we have to take that look. And sometimes it's a hard look and we think, damn, I thought I was in control of my life. I thought I was the master of my life in every facet. But as I look, I realize I'm a slave. I'm a slave financially. I'm a slave romantically. I'm a slave to my government. And in doing so, we have to not only recognize that, but begin to work out what we can do to become a little more free, to have a little more liberty. And as we begin to extend that and gain more options, we claim sovereignty over our life. And that's what it's about. Men taking their rightful position as leaders of their lives, of leaders of their domain, of leaders of who they can be, who they choose to be, and who they rightfully should be. I love you guys. You'll hear from me next episode.